Jessica Martinez stared at the final invoice from her divorce attorney, her hands trembling as she read the number: $52,843. Her entire life savings gone. Her ex-husband had walked away with most of their assets while she was left with crushing debt and 2 young children to support. But what happened next changed everything, not just for Jessica, but for over 1,000 women who would later find hope through her law firm. The woman who once couldn't afford her own legal representation now runs one of the most successful family law practices in Texas, generating over $50,000 per month, helping other women protect their assets during divorce. This is the story of Jessica Martinez, a 34-year-old former high school math teacher from Austin, Texas, whose world collapsed in 2015 when her marriage of 12 years ended in a bitter custody battle that consumed her life savings. Jessica had never imagined she would need to fight for her own children, or that the legal system she trusted would leave her financially devastated. At 34, she found herself starting over with $68,000 in debt, no career prospects, and the overwhelming responsibility of raising her 8-year-old daughter Emma and 6-year-old son Carlos as a single mother. What makes Jessica's transformation so remarkable isn't just that she overcame financial ruin, but that she channeled her pain into purpose. Her journey from a broke single mother studying for the LSAT at her kitchen table to building a law firm that employs 20 attorneys and serves over 1,000 clients annually reveals the extraordinary power of turning our greatest challenges into our greatest strengths. The stakes couldn't have been higher for Jessica, who not only had to rebuild her own life, but also had to ensure her children didn't suffer because of the choices adults had made. Jessica's story resonates with millions of women who have felt powerless in their own legal battles, who have watched their financial security disappear while lawyers charged hundreds of dollars per hour for phone calls and paperwork. Her experience as a client who felt unheard and financially exploited would later inform every aspect of how she built her practice, creating a firm that prioritizes transparency, affordability, and genuine advocacy for women going through the most difficult period of their lives. By the time you hear the complete story, you'll understand why Jessica's approach to family law has been featured in legal journals and why her firm has a waiting list of attorneys who want to work for her. If you're inspired by stories of people who transform their pain into purpose, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps us share these incredible journeys with people who need to hear them most. Jessica's normal life in Austin, Texas seemed picture-perfect from the outside. In 2003, at 22, she had married Michael Torres, a charming pharmaceutical sales representative she met during her senior year at the University of Texas. Jessica was teaching high school algebra at Cedar Park High School, a job she genuinely loved because she had a gift for making complex mathematical concepts accessible to struggling students. Her classroom was always full of laughter, and her students regularly scored among the highest in the district on standardized tests. The early years of their marriage were filled with the typical milestones of young couples building a life together. They bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a family-friendly neighborhood in Cedar Park in 2005, with Jessica contributing her teacher's salary toward the down payment, and Michael handling the mortgage with his substantially higher income from pharmaceutical sales. Jessica decorated their home with warmth and care, creating a space filled with family photos, her collection of math-themed artwork, and the comfortable furniture they had carefully selected together at weekend trips to various stores around Austin. Emma was born in 2007, and Jessica took a brief maternity leave before returning to teaching, grateful that the school schedule allowed her to spend summers with her daughter. Carlos followed in 2009, completing what Jessica believed was their perfect family. She loved the rhythm of their life, teaching during the school year, family vacations to South Padre Island each summer, weekend barbecues with neighbors, and the satisfaction of watching her students graduate and move on to successful careers or college. Michael's career in pharmaceutical sales was thriving, and by 2012, he was earning over $80,000 annually, while Jessica's teacher salary had grown to $42,000. They weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable, able to save modestly for the children's college funds and take occasional weekend trips to San Antonio or Dallas. Jessica handled most of the day-to-day family finances, paying bills and managing their checking account, while Michael managed their investments and handled the larger financial decisions. Their social life revolved around school events, neighborhood gatherings, and Michael's work functions. Jessica enjoyed meeting the other pharmaceutical representatives and their spouses at company dinners, though she sometimes felt out of place among the more glamorous and well-dressed wives who didn't work outside the home. She was proud of her career and the difference she made in her students' lives, but she occasionally wondered if Michael wished she were more like the other wives who could travel with their husbands or host elaborate dinner parties. The first cracks in their marriage appeared so gradually that Jessica didn't recognize them as warning signs. Michael began working longer hours, traveling more frequently for regional sales meetings, and seemed increasingly irritated by the demands of family life. When Emma complained that Daddy missed her school play, or when Carlos asked why Daddy was always on his phone during dinner, Jessica found herself making excuses for Michael's absence and distraction. By 2014, Michael was spending most weekends either working or playing golf with clients, leaving Jessica to handle soccer practices, birthday parties, and the endless list of activities that come with raising two active children. When she tried to discuss feeling overwhelmed, Michael would remind her that his job paid for their lifestyle and suggest that she should be grateful he was such a good provider. Jessica began to feel like she was raising the children alone while also working full-time. But she convinced herself that this was just a temporary phase in their marriage. The financial tension began in late 2014 when Jessica discovered that Michael had been making large purchases without discussing them with her. A new truck, expensive golf equipment, and several weekend trips with colleagues that she knew nothing about. When she questioned these expenditures, Michael became defensive, accusing her of not trusting him and reminding her that he earned more money than she did. Jessica felt her stomach knot with anxiety during these conversations, but she didn't know how to address the growing distance between them. What Jessica didn't know was that Michael had been having an affair with a colleague for over 6 months. He had been planning his exit strategy, quietly moving money into accounts Jessica didn't know about and building a narrative that would paint her as an unstable and unfit mother. The man she had trusted with her heart, her future and her children's well-being, was methodically dismantling their life together, while she continued to believe they were simply going through a rough patch that all marriages experience. The inciting incident that changed everything happened on a cold February morning in 2015. Jessica had arrived at school early to prepare for a parent-teacher conference when she received a text message from Michael that would shatter her world. "I've moved out. My attorney will be in touch. Don't try to contact me directly about anything. All communication needs to go through lawyers now." Jessica stared at the message in disbelief, reading it 3 times before the words fully registered. The man who had kissed her goodbye just that morning, who had helped Carlos with his homework the night before, was gone. Jessica's hands were shaking so violently that she could barely hold her phone as she tried to call Michael. The call went straight to voicemail, and his voice, once so familiar and comforting, now sounded cold and distant. "You've reached Michael Torres. Please leave a message." She hung up without saying anything, her mind racing with questions that had no answers. How long had he been planning this? Where was he living? What was she supposed to tell Emma and Carlos when they came home from school expecting their father to be there? The first few weeks after Michael's departure were a blur of confusion, panic, and desperate attempts to understand what had happened to her marriage. Jessica discovered that Michael had indeed hired an attorney, a prominent family law firm in downtown Austin that specialized in high-asset divorces. The initial letter from his legal team, delivered to her school by certified mail, outlined Michael's intention to seek joint custody of the children and an equitable distribution of their marital assets. The language was cold and clinical, referring to their children as minor dependents, and their 12-year marriage as a contractual relationship to be dissolved. Jessica's first mistake, though she wouldn't recognize it as such until much later, was believing that she could handle the initial stages of the divorce without legal representation. Michael had always handled their finances, and Jessica assumed that since they weren't wealthy, the divorce would be straightforward. She thought they could simply divide their assets fairly, agree on a custody arrangement that prioritized the children's well-being, and move forward with their separate lives. She had no idea that Michael's attorney was already working to position him as the primary parent, and that every day she went without legal representation was another day she was falling behind in a battle she didn't even know she was fighting. When Jessica finally realized she needed an attorney, 3 weeks after receiving the initial papers, she discovered that good family lawyers were expensive in ways she had never imagined. The first attorney she consulted, recommended by a colleague at school, quoted her a $5,000 retainer just to get started, with additional fees of $350 per hour for any work on her case. Jessica had exactly $2,400 in their joint checking account, which Michael could legally access until the court issued temporary orders. The second attorney she met with was slightly more affordable, but explained that divorce cases involving children typically cost between $15,000 and $30,000. Depending on how cooperative the parties were, Michael was showing no signs of cooperation. His attorney had already filed multiple motions requesting temporary custody arrangements, spousal support modifications, and detailed financial disclosures that would require hours of legal work to prepare properly. Jessica left that consultation feeling overwhelmed and financially trapped. But what you don't know yet is how much worse things were about to get for Jessica. Because while she was struggling to find legal representation she could afford, Michael's attorney was building a case that would paint her as an unfit mother, using every piece of information from their marriage against her. Jessica finally settled on a third attorney, Patricia Hoffman, primarily because she was willing to work with a smaller initial retainer of $2,000 and accept monthly payments for the balance. Patricia seemed competent and caring during their initial meeting, listening patiently as Jessica explained the situation and expressing sympathy for her predicament. What Jessica didn't realize was that Patricia's lower fees reflected her limited experience with complex custody cases and that she was already handling more cases than she could effectively manage. The divorce proceedings began in earnest in April 2015, and Jessica quickly learned that the legal system moves at its own pace, regardless of the emotional toll on families. Every decision required court filings. Every disagreement became a billable argument between attorneys. And every attempt at communication with Michael had to go through legal channels at a cost of hundreds of dollars. Jessica watched helplessly as her legal bills climbed week by week while seemingly little progress was made toward resolution. Michael's strategy became clear by early summer. He was going to fight for primary custody of the children while positioning himself as the financially responsible parent and Jessica as unstable and financially incompetent. His attorney filed motion after motion questioning Jessica's ability to provide a stable home environment, pointing to her modest teacher's salary and claiming that the children would be better served living primarily with their father. Each motion required a response from Jessica's attorney, and each response cost money she didn't have. The most devastating blow came in July when Michael's attorney presented evidence that Jessica had been taking anti-anxiety medication prescribed by her family doctor to help her cope with the stress of the divorce proceedings. The medication was perfectly legal and appropriate given her circumstances, but Michael's team used it to suggest that Jessica was mentally unstable and potentially unfit to care for the children. Jessica felt betrayed in the deepest possible way, realizing that the man she had trusted with her most intimate secrets was now using her vulnerabilities as weapons against her. As summer turned to fall, Jessica's legal bills had exceeded $20,000, and Patricia informed her that they were just getting started. The discovery phase of the divorce, where both sides were required to provide detailed financial information, was proving more complicated than expected. Michael had been hiding assets, moving money between various accounts, and had even started a new business that wasn't reflected in their earlier financial disclosures. Each revelation required additional legal work to investigate and document. The most heartbreaking aspect of this period was watching how the divorce was affecting Emma and Carlos. 8-year-old Emma had always been an excellent student, but her grades began slipping as she struggled to understand why her father had left and why Mommy was always stressed and crying. 6-year-old Carlos began having nightmares and asking Jessica repeatedly when Daddy was coming home. Jessica tried to shield them from the legal battle, but children are perceptive, and they could feel the tension and uncertainty that permeated their daily lives. By October 2015, Jessica's financial situation had become desperate. She had borrowed money from her parents, taken a cash advance on her credit cards, and was working as a tutor in the evenings to try to keep up with her legal expenses. Patricia warned her that if the case went to trial, which seemed increasingly likely given Michael's unwillingness to negotiate reasonably, the total costs could easily exceed $50,000. Jessica lay awake at night doing math in her head, trying to figure out how she could possibly afford to continue fighting for her children while also providing them with a stable home. The breaking point came in November when Michael's attorney filed a motion for temporary custody modification, claiming that Jessica's financial instability made her an unfit custodial parent. The irony was devastating. The legal costs of fighting for her children were being used as evidence that she couldn't provide for them adequately. Jessica realized that the system she had trusted to protect her family was actually working against her, favoring the party with more financial resources rather than the parent who had been the primary caregiver for years. The winter of 2015 was the darkest period of Jessica's life. By December, her legal bills had reached $38,000, and Patricia informed her that they still hadn't reached the trial phase of her divorce proceedings. Michael's attorney seemed determined to drag out every aspect of the case, filing motion after motion that required expensive responses and court appearances. Jessica began to understand that for wealthy clients, this strategy was designed to exhaust the other party's financial resources, forcing them to accept unfavorable settlements simply to end the financial bleeding. The temporary custody arrangement that had been put in place was devastating to Jessica's relationship with her children. Michael had been awarded primary custody during the divorce proceedings, meaning Emma and Carlos lived with him during the week and spent only weekends with Jessica. The reasoning from the court was that Michael had a more stable financial situation and could provide better continuity for the children during this difficult transition. Jessica felt like she was being punished for being a teacher, for choosing a career that prioritized service over salary. Emma and Carlos were struggling with the custody arrangement as much as Jessica was. Emma, now 9, had become withdrawn and sullen, angry at both parents for disrupting her life, but especially resentful toward Jessica, whom she blamed for making Daddy leave. Carlos, at 7, cried every Sunday night when he had to return to his father's apartment, begging Jessica to let him stay with her. These transitions were heartbreaking for all of them. But Jessica felt powerless to change a system that seemed designed to keep families apart rather than heal them. The financial strain was affecting every aspect of Jessica's life. She had maxed out 3 credit cards, borrowed $15,000 against her teacher's retirement account, and was behind on her mortgage payments. The house where Emma and Carlos had grown up, where she had imagined they would create childhood memories and where she had felt safe and secure, was now at risk of foreclosure. Jessica had never imagined that exercising her legal right to divorce would threaten her ability to keep a roof over her children's heads. Her relationship with her family became strained as well. Jessica's parents, both retired on fixed incomes, had already lent her $8,000 that she had no realistic plan for repaying. Her sister Maria, a nurse with her own financial responsibilities, wanted to help but couldn't understand why the divorce was costing so much money. Family gatherings became tense affairs where everyone was thinking about Jessica's situation, but no one knew what to say or do to help. At school, Jessica tried to maintain her professional composure, but her colleagues began to notice that she seemed distracted and stressed. Her principal, Mrs. Henderson, called her in for a private meeting in January 2016 to express concern about her performance and to ask if there was anything the school could do to support her during this difficult time. Jessica appreciated the concern but felt embarrassed that her personal problems were affecting her professional reputation. The most devastating moment came in February 2016, when Patricia informed Jessica that Michael's attorney had made a settlement offer that would give him primary custody of the children, require Jessica to pay him spousal support and leave her with responsibility for most of the marital debt. The offer was insulting and completely unacceptable, but Patricia explained that rejecting it would mean going to trial, which could cost another $20,000 to $30,000 with no guarantee of a better outcome. Jessica sat in Patricia's office, staring at the settlement papers, and felt something break inside her. The woman who had once been confident in her ability to solve complex mathematical problems, who had inspired hundreds of students to believe in themselves, who had managed a household and raised 2 children while working full-time, was being told that she was financially and legally powerless to protect her own family. The system was designed to favor the party with more resources, and there was nothing she could do about it. That night, Jessica sat at her kitchen table surrounded by legal documents, bills, and calculator, trying to figure out if there was any possible way she could continue fighting. She had $43,000 in debt related to the divorce. Her savings were completely depleted, and she was 3 months behind on her mortgage. Emma and Carlos were asleep upstairs, and she could hear Carlos crying softly in his room, as he did most nights since the custody arrangement had begun. For the first time since Michael had left, Jessica allowed herself to consider giving up. Maybe Michael was right that he could provide better for the children. Maybe she was being selfish by continuing to fight a battle that was destroying her financially and emotionally. Maybe the right thing to do was to accept the settlement, even if it meant seeing her children only on weekends and holidays. But as Jessica sat there in the darkness of her kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of her legal defeat, something began to shift in her thinking. She started to analyze the situation not as a desperate mother, but as the mathematician she had always been. She began to see patterns in how the legal system worked, inefficiencies in how family law was practiced, and opportunities for improvement that no one seemed to be pursuing. She realized that her experience was not unique, that thousands of women every year were being financially devastated by divorce proceedings that seemed designed to benefit attorneys more than families. She understood that the legal system's complexity was often unnecessary, that many of the procedures and motions were more about generating billable hours than achieving justice. Most importantly, she began to see that her experience as a client who felt unheard and financially exploited could be valuable insight into how family law practice could be done differently, the insight that would change. Everything came to Jessica in the early hours of March 15, 2016, as she sat at that same kitchen table reviewing her legal bills for the 100th time. She realized that she had learned more about family law in the past year than many people learn in a lifetime, not from books or classes, but from living through every aspect of the process as a client. She understood the system's flaws because she had suffered from them. She knew what clients needed because she had needed those same things. What happened next, nobody expected, least of all Jessica herself. Jessica's transformation began with a single decision made in the pre-dawn hours of March 16, 2016. Instead of accepting defeat, she decided to fight back by learning everything she possibly could about the legal system that had been used against her. She walked to her computer and began researching law schools, LSAT requirements, and financial aid options for graduate students. If the legal system was going to destroy her financially, she was going to understand exactly how it worked and find a way to use that knowledge to help other women avoid her fate. The first step was the law school admission test, which Jessica scheduled for June 2016. She had always been strong at standardized tests, and her mathematical background gave her an advantage with the logical reasoning sections of the LSAT. But studying for the exam while working full-time, managing weekend custody of her children, and continuing to deal with her ongoing divorce proceedings required a level of organization and time management that pushed her to her limits. Jessica converted her dining room into a study space, covering the walls with LSAT prep materials, legal vocabulary flashcards, and timelines for law school applications. She woke up at 4:30 every morning to study for 2 hours before getting Emma and Carlos ready for school, studied during her lunch break at work, and spent her evenings after the children went to bed, working through practice tests and logic games. The irony wasn't lost on Jessica that she was paying her own attorney hundreds of dollars to handle her divorce while simultaneously learning that many of the procedures could be handled more efficiently and cost-effectively. She began to see billing inefficiencies in her own case, unnecessary motions that seemed designed more to generate fees than to advance her interests, and missed opportunities for negotiation that could have saved thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, her divorce case was finally heading toward resolution, though not in the way Jessica had hoped. In April 2016, facing the reality that she simply could not afford to continue fighting, Jessica accepted a modified version of Michael's settlement offer. She was awarded joint custody with a more reasonable visitation schedule. But she had to take responsibility for $32,000 of the divorce-related debt and give up her claim to Michael's retirement accounts. The settlement was far from ideal, but it allowed Jessica to keep the house and provided a foundation for rebuilding her relationship with Emma and Carlos. Most importantly, it freed her from the crushing legal bills that had been accumulating month after month. Patricia Hoffman, her attorney, had ultimately cost her $52,843, a number that Jessica would never forget because it represented not just money, but the price of feeling powerless in her own legal battle. Jessica's LSAT score in June 2016 was 168 out of 180, placing her in the 95th percentile of test takers. Her score was high enough to qualify for significant financial aid at several Texas law schools, and she was particularly interested in the University of Texas School of Law because of their strong clinical programs and their reputation for training attorneys who went on to serve underrepresented communities. Application process for law school was intense, requiring personal statements, letters of recommendation, and financial aid forms that laid bare the extent of Jessica's financial struggles. In her personal statement, Jessica wrote honestly about her experience as a divorce client and her desire to reform how family law was practiced to make it more accessible and effective for women and families. But if you think Jessica's challenges were behind her, you're wrong. The most demanding part of her journey was just beginning. Acceptance to law school came with its own set of financial challenges. Even with substantial financial aid, law school would require Jessica to take on additional debt at a time when she was already struggling to pay off her divorce-related expenses. She would need to continue working part-time to support Emma and Carlos while completing one of the most demanding academic programs in higher education. Jessica enrolled at UT Law in August 2016, beginning a 3-year journey that would test every aspect of her intellectual, emotional, and physical endurance. The workload was brutal, with students expected to read hundreds of pages of legal texts each week, prepare detailed case briefs, and participate in intensive Socratic method discussions where professors could call on any student at any time to analyze complex legal principles. The first year of law school, known as 1L, is notorious for its difficulty, and Jessica found herself competing with students who were 10 years younger and had no other responsibilities beyond their studies. While her classmates could spend entire weekends in the library, Jessica had to balance her academic work with parenting responsibilities, her part-time tutoring business, and the ongoing emotional work of helping Emma and Carlos adjust to their new family dynamic. Jessica's advantage was her maturity and her practical experience with the legal system. While other students were learning about family law from textbooks, Jessica could contribute insights from having lived through a contentious custody battle. Her professors began to notice her thoughtful contributions to class discussions, and several encouraged her to consider specializing in family law, despite the field's reputation for being emotionally demanding and financially challenging. During her second year of law school, Jessica began working at the university's family law clinic, where supervised students provided legal services to low-income clients who couldn't afford private attorneys. The work was eye-opening because it showed Jessica that her experience wasn't unique, that the legal system's barriers affected thousands of women who were trying to protect their families while navigating complex and expensive legal procedures. One case that particularly affected Jessica involved a 38-year-old woman named Carmen Rodriguez, who was trying to divorce an abusive husband while protecting her 3 young children. Carmen worked 2 minimum-wage jobs, but still couldn't afford the thousands of dollars required for competent legal representation. Jessica spent dozens of hours helping Carmen understand her legal options, prepare court documents, and develop a safety plan for leaving an abusive relationship. Working with Carmen and other clinic clients confirmed Jessica's growing belief that the legal system's complexity and cost created barriers that particularly affected women, who were more likely to have lower incomes and less familiarity with financial and legal matters. She began to envision a different kind of family law practice, one that prioritized transparency, affordability, and genuine advocacy for clients who had been marginalized by traditional legal services. Jessica's academic performance in law school was exceptional, and she graduated in May 2019 in the top 10% of her class. Her success was particularly remarkable given the challenges she had overcome, and several of her professors encouraged her to consider pursuing prestigious judicial clerkships or positions at large, law firms that could provide valuable experience and substantial starting salaries. But Jessica had a different vision for her career, one that was shaped by her own experience as a legal client and informed by her work with underserved families in the university clinic. She was going to start her own practice, one that would revolutionize how family law services were delivered to women who needed competent representation but couldn't afford traditional legal fees. Jessica passed the Texas bar exam in July 2019 and officially became a licensed attorney exactly 4 years and 5 months after receiving that devastating settlement offer in her own divorce case. Her first office was a small, shared workspace in Austin that cost her $800 per month, furnished with a used desk, 2 chairs, and a determination to build something different from the traditional family law practices that had failed her as a client. The Martinez family law practice opened in September 2019 with a revolutionary business model that prioritized transparency, affordability, and results. Instead of charging clients hourly fees that could quickly spiral out of control, Jessica offered fixed-fee packages for different types of family law services. A simple, uncontested divorce cost $2,500. A contested custody case was priced at $7,500. And complex asset division cases were handled for $12,000. Regardless of how many hours they required, Jessica's approach was based on her understanding that most family law cases followed predictable patterns, and that much of the work could be systematized and streamlined without sacrificing quality. She had analyzed hundreds of divorce cases during law school and realized that lawyers were often reinventing the wheel for each client, charging premium rates for routine procedures that could be handled more efficiently. Her first client was Maria Gonzalez, a 42-year-old restaurant manager who had been quoted $15,000 by other attorneys for a custody modification case. Jessica was able to help Maria achieve her goals for $3,500, and Maria was so grateful that she referred 3 other women to the practice within the first month. Word began to spread through Austin's Latino community that there was finally a family law attorney who understood the financial constraints working mothers faced. But the most impressive part of Jessica's transformation was still to come. Within 6 months, the Martinez family law practice was handling more cases than Jessica could manage alone. She hired her first associate attorney, Sarah Kim, a recent law school graduate who shared Jessica's vision of making legal services more accessible to working families. Sarah had student loan debt of over $100,000, but was willing to work for a lower starting salary in exchange for the opportunity to build something meaningful with Jessica. Jessica's business model proved to be not just more ethical than traditional hourly billing, but also more profitable. By systematizing routine procedures and using technology to streamline case management, the practice could handle more cases more efficiently than firms that relied on billable hours. Jessica was also able to offer clients payment plans and sliding scale fees based on income, making her services accessible to women who had previously been priced out of quality legal representation. The practice's reputation for excellence grew rapidly through client referrals and Jessica's active involvement in community organizations. She began speaking at women's professional groups, teaching financial literacy workshops, and writing articles for local publications about divorce planning and asset protection. Her message resonated with thousands of women who had felt powerless in their own legal situations. By the end of 2020, Jessica had hired 3 more attorneys and was handling over 300 cases per year. The practice had moved to a larger office space and had developed specialized programs for different types of clients, including a workshop series for women going through divorce that covered everything from basic legal principles to financial, planning, and emotional support resources. Jessica's personal life had transformed as well. Emma and Carlos, now 13 and 11, were thriving academically and emotionally. Emma had developed an interest in social justice and talked about wanting to become a lawyer like her mother. Carlos was excelling in math and science, and both children were proud of how their mother had overcome such challenging circumstances to build something that helped other families. The practice's success allowed Jessica to pay off all of her debt, including the $52,000 from her own divorce. By early 2021, she was finally able to provide financial security for her children while also building something that created positive change in other people's lives. The woman who had once felt powerless and financially illiterate was now managing a business with annual revenues approaching $800,000. In 2021, Jessica launched the Women's Asset Protection Program, a comprehensive service designed to help women understand and protect their financial interests before, during, and after divorce. The program included legal representation, financial planning services, and emotional support resources, addressing all aspects of the challenges women face during family transitions. The program was so successful that Jessica began licensing the model to other attorneys across Texas. By 2022, the Martinez family law practice had grown to include 8 attorneys and was handling over 600 cases annually. Jessica had been featured in Texas Monthly magazine as one of the rising stars in legal services and had been invited to speak at state and national conferences about innovative approaches to family law practice. Her fixed fee model had been adopted by dozens of other practices across the country. The most satisfying moment of Jessica's professional transformation came in March 2023 when she received a call from Patricia Hoffman, her former divorce attorney. Patricia was facing her own financial difficulties and asked Jessica if she would consider hiring her as an associate attorney. Jessica politely declined, but offered to refer Patricia to other firms that might be interested in her experience. The role reversal was symbolic of how completely Jessica's life had changed. Today, as we're speaking, the Martinez family law practice employs 20 attorneys across 3 office locations and serves over 1,000 women annually. Jessica's monthly income consistently exceeds $50,000, the amount she once paid for legal representation that left her feeling unheard and financially devastated. The practice has saved clients an estimated $2.5 million compared to traditional hourly billing models, and Jessica has been recognized by the Texas Bar Association for her innovations in legal service delivery. But the numbers, impressive as they are, don't tell the complete story of Jessica's transformation. The real measure of her success is the hundreds of women who have been able to protect their children and their assets because they had access to competent, affordable legal representation. Jessica's experience as a client who felt powerless in the legal system has informed every aspect of how her practice operates, creating a model that prioritizes client empowerment and genuine advocacy. Jessica Martinez's journey from a financially devastated divorce client to one of Texas's most successful family law attorneys reveals several universal truths about resilience, transformation, and the power of turning our greatest challenges into our greatest strengths. Her story demonstrates that sometimes our most painful experiences contain the seeds of our greatest opportunities, if we're willing to learn from them and use that knowledge to serve others. The first lesson from Jessica's transformation is that expertise often comes from experience, not just education. While Jessica eventually earned her law degree and passed the bar exam, her real understanding of what clients needed came from having been a client herself. She knew what it felt like to receive confusing legal bills, to feel unheard by her attorney, and to watch her financial security disappear while lawyers charged hundreds of dollars for routine procedures. This experiential knowledge became the foundation for building a practice that truly served its clients rather than simply generating billable hours. The second lesson is that perceived disadvantages can become competitive advantages when viewed from the right perspective. Jessica's financial constraints during her divorce forced her to understand the legal system's inefficiencies and unnecessary complexities. Her experience as a working mother made her acutely aware of the time and scheduling pressures that other clients faced. Her background as a teacher gave her the ability to explain complex legal concepts in accessible language. All of these experiences, which felt like limitations at the time, became strengths that differentiated her practice from traditional law firms. The third lesson is that sustainable success comes from solving real problems for real people. Jessica's business model succeeded not because she found a clever way to make money, but because she identified genuine problems in how legal services were delivered and developed solutions that created value for her clients. Her fixed-fee pricing model, her systematic approach to routine procedures, and her emphasis on client education all addressed specific pain points that women experienced when navigating the legal system. The fourth lesson is that transformation requires both vision and persistence. Jessica didn't just dream about becoming an attorney and opening her own practice. She took concrete steps every day for years to make that vision a reality. She studied for the LSAT while working full-time and managing custody responsibilities. She completed law school while rebuilding her relationship with her children and paying off debt from her divorce. She started her practice with limited resources but unlimited determination to create something better than what existed. The fifth, and perhaps most important lesson, is that our greatest struggles often prepare us to help others facing similar challenges. Jessica's painful experience with the legal system gave her insights that she never could have gained from textbooks or classroom discussions. Her empathy for clients going through difficult divorces was authentic because she had lived through the same experiences. Her commitment to making legal services more accessible was personal because she remembered what it felt like to need help that she couldn't afford. Jessica's story also illustrates the ripple effects of individual transformation. Her success hasn't just changed her own life and the lives of her children. It has positively affected over 1,000 families who have received better legal representation at more affordable prices. Her innovative business model has been adopted by other attorneys, multiplying the impact of her original insights. Her story has inspired other women to pursue careers in law and to challenge traditional assumptions about how professional services should be delivered. For anyone listening to this story who feels trapped by circumstances beyond their control, Jessica's transformation offers hope and practical guidance. She shows us that it's possible to rebuild from devastating setbacks, that formal education can be pursued at any age, and that our most painful experiences can become the foundation for meaningful work that serves others. Jessica's journey reminds us that the skills and insights we gain during difficult periods of our lives have value, even when we can't see it at the time. Her mathematical background helped her analyze legal problems systematically. Her experience as a teacher prepared her to explain complex concepts to clients. Her struggles as a single mother made her sensitive to the scheduling and financial pressures that other working mothers faced. Every aspect of her background contributed to her success as an attorney and business owner. The transformation also demonstrates the importance of taking ownership of our education and professional development. Jessica didn't wait for someone else to solve her problems or create opportunities for her. She identified what she needed to learn, found ways to acquire that knowledge, and applied it systematically to build something that created value for others. Her willingness to invest time, energy, and money in her own development, even when resources were scarce, was essential to her eventual success. Perhaps most importantly, Jessica's story shows us that meaningful success often comes from serving others who face challenges similar to those we've overcome. Her practice thrives because she genuinely understands what her clients are going through and has designed her services to address their specific needs. The authenticity of her empathy and the practicality of her solutions create trust and loyalty that no marketing strategy could replicate. If Jessica's story resonates with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with transformation and overcoming challenges in the comments below. Have you ever turned a difficult experience into an opportunity to help others? What obstacles are you currently facing that might contain hidden opportunities for growth and service? Your story could inspire someone else who needs to hear that. Transformation is possible. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of people who turned their greatest challenges into their greatest successes. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an inspiring transformation story. And give this video a like if Jessica's journey motivated you to think differently about your own challenges and opportunities. Until next time, remember that your current struggles might be preparing you for a future you can't even imagine yet.